Okay. Yesterday we were discussing the fact that Reb Shimon admits that the animal that the blemish wasn't recognized before Yom Tov would be mukseh, because if there was no blemish recognized before Yom Tov, so the person was not anticipating slaughtering the animal on Yom Tov, and therefore, good morning, Adam. Therefore, Reb Shimon held that it would be mukseh, the animal on Yom Tov, even if subsequently it gets a blemish on Yom Tov, and now technically if it gets a blemish on Yom Tov, and even if someone went ahead and a expert went ahead and looked at the blemish and it said it's a mum kavua, it's a permanent blemish, nevertheless, and now you should be able to slaughter it outside the Beit HaMikdash area. Nevertheless, since when Yom Tov entered, there was no blemish that established there, therefore it's mukseh. That was the Gemara's, what the Gemara
So
said.
is this like a new category for Reb Shimon or no? Or is it line up with other things that he did?
I'm saying that case was not a new category, because that case was another type of item that you were separated from, similar to the figs and the, similar
Right, right,
to the grapes. But then,
right.
like you pointed out yesterday, there's a new category that we wanted to introduce. According to the way some people learned the Gemara, that there's a new category of food that someone was separated from, that they maybe that should be forbidden for them to
Mhm.
eat. On the, because it was separated from them. That was what we said yesterday, and that seemed to be something new, like you said. We're on Mem Vav Amabet. We are on 46B, 46B2. Because the last thing the first new paragraph of Hatam Krat Pinchas, because the Gemara said, a woman, if that's the case, why is it when a woman makes a vow, let's say she's forbade food, let's say a certain food to herself, and she's not eating this item, why is it? See, Mark, by the way, I think one approach to that case of the woman was that she, let's say it was her food, so it belonged to her, that she forbade on the whole world. So for the whole world, they also would not have a way of, therefore go back to moving it, because since it's the whole world. Good morning. It was a vowed Adam that the whole world can't eat this food, so that everybody was separated from it. No one has use from it. So that then it would not go into its new category of it's only about eating. If she forbade herself to some type of food, but that food is permitted to other people, so then the food is not mukseh.
How
Is
can
not.
she forbid everybody from the food? Well, she has to own it,
Right, let's
apparently.
say she owned it. Exactly. If she owned the food, it's her food, and she says it's forbidden. She made a vow. I'm not eating. Nobody can eat this. I'm forbidding this food upon me and the whole world. So
Right.
that would make it that we're not introducing a new category of of mukseh. It's just another thing that you can't handle. Nobody can handle that,
Right.
because it was forbidden on for
Apparently,
everybody.
they have to know that. Someone wouldn't know it.
Right, right. They would have to know that it's forbidden. Right.
Because no one
Uh,
would think this apple is forbidden.
right. Now, so the Gemara said, but why is it when the lady for why is it that the husband could undo the vow on Mayfair, the vow should undo. He could annul the vow on Shabbat if she doesn't know that when Shabbat entered. The Gemara says she doesn't know that the husband is going to knock out the vow. So why shouldn't that be? Why shouldn't that be separated from her? But the obvious question on that, what's really the question of the Gemara? You know, wanting, what's the question? She knows that she has a husband. She knows that really there's a very good chance that the husband might knock out the vow. So why? How do we compare the case of the firstborn, animal, mourning asaf, the firstborn animal, she's separated from, they're separated from, because when Yontif came, it had no blemish. They were not thinking of, and there's no, and even if it would get a blemish, who says they'll find a chacham to look at it? So there's no, and the chacham is not even allowed to look at it on Yom Tov. So she's totally separate. The person's very separated from that food, to that animal. But when it comes to a lady who goes ahead and makes a vow, what's the Gemara's question? Who says that she'll have? The Gemara's the question. Who says that her husband is going to go ahead and knock out the vow? And therefore, what? Therefore, it should be muksa. And then what's the Gemara's answer? The Gemara answers Hatam Pinchas. The Gemara says, Mishmei the Rava Amar Pinchas. Rava Kohen Oderet. Anyone who makes a vow, Al Dat Balhin Oderet. She has in mind. Listen, and it's up to my husband. If my husband wants it, and she knows that and a husband, most probably the husband's not going to want her to forbade herself from certain things, and he's going to go ahead and knock out the vow. So the fact that, Ramosha Feinstein writes, the fact that she knows that there exists this possibility that the husband is going to knock out the vow, so therefore this food is not separated from her, because she knows there's a very good possibility that what's going to happen. What was that?
Did he do it at any time? Is there anything with Ben Ashmashot, or if it starts Shabbat or during Shabbat or an hour after she did it?
Right. It's the day that he hears. You have to look in the halachot, but it's the day that he hears it. He has that window. Once he hears it, he has to go ahead. He has that day to accept it or to not accept it. He has that day, that window to knock out the vow.
Full day.
So, what did you say, Mark?
A full day?
You'll see the pasuk says miyom el yom. If you look at the pasuk the pasuk is a maton.
From one day to another.
Yeah, but the Gemara says.
That's okay. We'll have to get it.
It says like this. It says a lady makes a vow, or a daughter makes a vow. Biyom Shamo. That says, let's see. There's a Rashi over there in the Chumash. Let's see what Rashi says. The husband hears it. Let's see that pasuk again. Yeah, the pasuk says, if the husband is quiet, miyom el yom. So Rashi says he only could knock out the vow until dark. So it sounds like from Rashi that you might have thought that it's a 24-hour period. And it sounds like from this Rashi that if he heard the vow if the Rabbi Bachai says from the beginning of the day, I don't see here the Rabbi Bachai says Hafar the Darim is from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, like it says by Maaseh Bereshit, that the day goes after the night that passed. It's not a 24-hour period. It's not a 24-hour period Therefore, if she made a vow at night, the husband has the ability to knock out the vow that whole night and that whole following day, right? If she made a vow last night, he could knock it out last night,
If she
and
makes it in the day, he has it
and
until
and,
that night.
and if he makes it by day, he only has until sundown.
Right.
Therefore, the husband could knock out. The Bein Bachaya says, Pasuk Tezvav Tezayin, the husband could knock out the vow that the lady made on Shabbat. Now, see, even the Dorim, he takes the position, if the lady made a vow that has nothing to do with Shabbat, right? Remember, the Gemara said that the Chacham, Hatarat Nedarim, undoing a vow when you go to the big rabbi or three people who sit on their court, they only can undo a vow that has on Shabbat if it has to do with Shabbat. But if it's not pertinent to Shabbat, let them wait till after Shabbat to deal with it. If she said, I'm not going to eat the food on Monday, so deal with it on Monday or Sunday. Don't deal with it on Shabbat. If they said, I'm not going to eat the food on Shabbat, then she could go to the three people on Shabbat. But when it came to the law of the husband knocking out a vow, it didn't say only he knocks out the vow things that are on Shabbat for Shabbat. It didn't say that. It said he knocks out the vow on Shabbat, and therefore the Rebbeinu Bachai is learning he knocks out any vow she made, even has to do with weekdays, because if he doesn't knock it out on Shabbat, the vow remain the vow would remain, right, Adam? So therefore, the husband has the right to knock out any vow, whatever has to do with Shabbat or not, on the Shabbat. That's the position of the Rebbeinu Bachai, because he said even though
This is
it's like
different. In other words, the first time he said it has to happen on the day. That means any day. If the person makes a vow Friday night, you have all day till the end of Shabbat to knock it out. If he does it on a Tuesday, Tuesday. But over here now you're saying if it has to do with Shabbat, he has to do it on. He could do it on Shabbat, even if it was 4 days ago that she made the vow.
no. We're saying that if she makes a neder on Shabbat,
Yeah.
a neder which has nothing to do with Shabbat. She said that
This week during the
this
week.
week, during the week, I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to eat any. I'm fasting by day and I'm eating at night. She made such a vow. So since if he heard it on Shabbat, the husband heard about it on Shabbat. He heard about the vow on Shabbat. He needs to knock. He has a right to knock it out on Shabbat. Even though the issue, it seems like we don't want to judge a case on Shabbat. Meaning, what's the issue? When we have the three people, right? When we have that bezdin of three that we put together through Hatarat Nedarim, we don't do it on Shabbat, right? When do you do it in the shul? Mostly Shabbat, after Shabbat. You don't do it. Why don't you do it on Shabbat? Why don't you do Hatarat Nedarim on Shabbat in general? Is that a good question? Mark, you with me?
Good one. Yes.
So the answer is from the Rebbeinu Bachai, it's because it has an appearance that you're judging a case, making a case on Shabbat. You're
You're not
judging
allowed to judge.
and we don't judge case. The court is closed on Shabbat. We don't open the court on Shabbat. Generally, the court should be closed on Shabbat, right? So it looks like you're judging a case. I mean, Yom Tov also might be closed. You know what I'm saying? We have to see. But the point is, we don't want to judge. We don't want to judge the case. But here you have. If you don't do it, if the husband doesn't annul it, he heard about it on Shabbat. See, the window of opportunity is very limited. You don't have opportunity after Shabbat to knock it out. You heard about it on Shabbat. Therefore, we're going to allow him to go ahead and knock it out on Shabbat. That's what we say about the husband. Now, he says the line, "She'im lo achav," if not now, eimatai. What can I do? You can't do it. But a chacham can only undo vows that have to do with Shabbat. Now, because You know, and he clarifies so beautifully, Rabbi Bachaye, that the time that the husband can knock out the wife's vow is not only on the day that she made the vow. She made it on Tuesday, he can knock out Tuesday. If she and he heard if she he made it on Tuesday and he only heard about it on Shabbat, that's the time. That's where the clock begins, right? I mean, the clock begins the day that the husband heard about it. Exactly. Right. And that's a beautiful idea because the pasuk says, if the husband, after he heard about the vow, he went ahead and he accepted the vow. He said, "Yeah, I want the vow to remain." He didn't knock it out, and then subsequently he knocks out the vow, and she relies on him because she didn't know that he accepted the vow. So then she followed. She thought that my husband knocked out the vow. He's going to be punished for her. And the pasuk says, because the pasuk says he's gonna if he subsequently knocks out the vow after he accepted the vow, he will carry the sin of his wife, so to speak. He's responsible because he caused his wife to sin because she relied on him that he knocked out the vow when really he really first accepted the vow, and he says he enters instead of his wife for all the punishment he gets. Um, the punishment is if he accepted the vow. The husband said when he heard the vow, he validated. He said, "I'm okay with it." And then subsequently he changed his mind. He said, "I don't want the vow," and she didn't know that he accepted the vow to begin with, and she relies on him that he said I knocked out the vow.
She made a vow, and she's assuming that he's going to knock it
No,
out.
no, she doesn't know. She doesn't know. She knows her husband there's a good chance he's going to knock out the vow, not knock out the vow. So she has to be careful. Until her husband knocks out the vow, she has to be careful, right? Because maybe the vow remains. But the husband, what did the husband do?
He said, "Good."
He said he at least to he didn't tell. He said I acknowledge the vow and I want to accept the vow to remain. At 10 o'clock in the morning, he said the vow is good. Then at 12 o'clock, he wants to change his mind. And he says, I knock out the vow. That knockout doesn't help. Once you accept it. And then she went ahead and she heard about it. Her husband told her, I knocked out the vow. He told something that he couldn't do. And then she goes ahead and she eats the apple. He's responsible. Okay. Because that's some of the laws. Then when we get to Pashas Matot, they'll be discussing those laws about the Darim. Okay. Does some want to say that when something is dependent on somebody else, sometimes people don't really have the confidence that it's going to happen. So it's dependent on her husband. The lady made the vow regarding the food, and it's dependent on her husband hearing about it and knocking it out. So the Gemara was thinking that maybe that should be separated from her because it's not something that's in her hands to control. When you have it in your hands to control something, then you are much more. So then it remains. She has. Right. But if the husband, it's not in her. I'm saying to undo the vow, it's not in her control. To knock out the vow is not in her control. So she could, but she still has to find the people. We'll have to see it. She has to get the people. Okay, we'll see about it. Okay, and that could be much easier than the story of the Bechor of finding a chacham. First of all, because on Shabbat, finding a chacham, you need specifically a chacham for certain types of blemishes that are not. And the animal's missing the foot. You don't need the chacham. And Rashi points it out you don't need the chacham if it's missing a limb, if it's clear. But when it's not clear that it's a permanent blemish, then you need the chacham. And also the chacham is not supposed to look at it on Shabbat, on Yom Tov. So therefore, it's really separated. But that's really the back and the forth of the Gemara. That's how some want to explain that she's separating the Gemara in the question. It's the same way that it's called mukseh. We're discussing mukseh. And we're discussing if an animal before Yom Tov, if a person had an animal that did not have a blemish, and therefore you can't slaughter that animal on Yom Tov if it's a firstborn animal, because the firstborn animal has to be brought to the Beit HaMikdash, and you're separating your mind from using it because it doesn't have a blemish. And since the only way I could use it if someone else has to allow me to use it, so therefore the Gemara is thinking the same way you're separated from using that animal, so you're separated from eating this food, and therefore there should be mukseh. So the Gemara answers, no, it's different. When it comes to the food, yes, the lady said a vow, I'm not going to eat this food, but she knows, what does the wife know? Whenever she knows that it's up to my husband. And therefore, she's much more thinking about the fact that she might be able to use this food on the Shabbat because of the fact that her husband has the ability to. That's what the Gemara says. Call on a lady who makes a vow. Now, that's only if it has certain types of vows that he has the power to undo. Like we said, a husband cannot undo all vows, all right. And Morris, husband only specific types of vows. He can undo. We said like anything, if she wants to afflict herself not to eat, or anything that has to do with him, like she doesn't want to wear makeup or anything like that. So then the Gemara says, Tashma. The Gemara says, look, I have a question. Nishalim l'darim shehem shel sarach haShabbat b'Shabbat. Right? You could go ahead and you could do hatarat l'darim on Shabbat if it has to do for Shabbat. Person said, I'm not eating the cake I'm not eating any cake. 3 minutes, exactly. And this is anybody, not about a wife specifically. Anybody makes a vow, you could undo it by bringing a call like we do before Rosh Hashanah, but you only could convene this court of 3 or Nishal Nedarim, or go to the Chacham, big Chacham, or 3, only if it is a vow that has to do with Shabbat. Like we said before, we don't want to bring together a court on Shabbat. In general, we don't want to be judging things on Shabbat, but it looks like you're judging a case. But if you're stuck because it has to do for Shabbat, the person I'm not going to the Kiddush on Shabbat. I'm not going to my friend's Kiddush on Shabbat. I'm upset at them, which is a bad thing. You're taking revenge. But then someone talks some sense into them and says, stop being a baby. Stop acting like that.
Both of these still apply today?
Both apply today.
No, man could undo his wife now.
I would think, again, we have to look at the chinuch. I would think yes. Why shouldn't it apply? But we don't hear about it. We never hear about it. So maybe we got to bring back the chinuch. There's a sefer chinuch right over here. Yeah, remember, Mark, we said it's not all vows. It's only vows that we said that have to do with you
Or her.
or her afflicting her, right? So that seems to be the 2 types of categories. So there's an amazing statement.
I'm not going to Kiddush at my friend's house.
But maybe if it looks bad for you, it might look bad for you that your wife didn't come. Mark, what happened to your wife? Why didn't she come? Might be a bad. Your wife could be a positive reflection on you, as we know, or chas v'shalom the opposite. I mean, I wonder if that's called enough of connected to you. You know, I'm just suggesting. Okay, right, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's, we have to know how much we can stretch it.
And I can only say that affects me.
Okay, right. So I'm saying. So I'm just right. So I'm saying right. So I'm saying we have to know exactly what's called that affects you. Right. I'm not saying that's exactly.
I want to go for a walk on Shabbat. I think about that affects me because I want to walk with
Yeah, that might be. We have to know what's good. We have to know what's called here. Mithafarat nedarim.
I can make everything.
I hear you.
Works my feet.
I get you. I get you. So let's see. Tough vav. Mitzvah number 406. All right. The mitzvah number 406 says like this. Um, I mean, he says, I mean, it's definitely, he says it applies nowadays. Um, let's see what he says. Dine mitzvah. See, here he's talking about the categories as hatarat. He calls it hatarat nedarim and hafarat nedarim. He mixes them both together. Oh, let's see. See, he says he emphasized the husband and the father is very clear in the pasuk because the pasuk talks about the husband knocking out the vows of his wife and the father knocking out of his daughter. But we also have a law that the chacham can knock out a vow, and 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 that's from what would you say? The chacham has to be a man.
No.
Yeah, a late
You can knock that out.
a man or a woman. Right. And so he seems to be focusing on that, on the Hatarat Nedarim. He's not focused. I don't see him focus too much on the husband knocking out the vows, but it's it shouldn't make any the logic should apply as well today. I don't see it's not something dependent in the land. There are certain mitzvahs that depend on the land of Israel. There's certain things. Okay, well, maybe we'll take maybe we'll look at the Rambam next time, and we'll see more about it. Okay, but getting back to our Gemara continues. The Gemara says, Tashma, Nishalim l'nedarim shel sarech haShabbat b'Shabbat. We could go ahead and ask the nedarim if you have a neder, and it has to do with Shabbat. You could go ahead and go to a chacham on Shabbat and knock it out, undo it. Vamai, and then when you do it, and why are you doing it on Shabbat? Because you want to use it on Shabbat. Let's say you want to go ahead and eat that food on Shabbat. But how could you go ahead and use it? Vamai, it should be mukseh. What do you even if you find the person to do it, but since you were separated from it, Shabbat came, the neder was on you, the vow was on you. Who says you're gonna get a chacham? You're gonna find the chacham. You're gonna find the expert to go ahead and undo your neder, your vow. Therefore, since you're not, it's something that's dependent on others. Who says you're gonna get that rabbi? So maybe your mind is that you're not for Shabbat at least, or because also maybe you'll get it in a couple of days. But who says you're gonna? I mean, it has to. The onset of Shabbat, you had this vow on you. Say it again. The onset of Shabbat, you had this vow on you, and therefore you had it on you.
It's kind of like
the bechor, like the animal, the firstborn animal that when Yom Tov came, it wasn't you couldn't use it because it had no blemish. That's what the Gemara is comparing.
Right.
And
So now that the holidays here, or Shabbat's here,
you're separated from
already
it.
separated. I can't judge it, and I can't get a to come check the animal. I can't get a come to nullify the vow.
Oh, so the question who says I can't? Now the question, maybe I will find the chacham to nullify a vow.
But the animal, you can't do it even
Right,
if you find it.
right. Animal, I can't. So you can say that's a big difference between the animal. That's what the Gemara is going to
That's a
say.
big difference.
Right. So the Gemara says, "Hatam mi'ilo." If you don't find the chacham, but you have the other option that you mentioned earlier. You get three ordinary people could undo a vow. But when it comes to the animal, who it doesn't have a blemish, but when Yontav came and you were separated from the animal, who says you're gonna find the chacham and that he's gonna want to be involved in doing it, but he can't really do it? Because Yom Tov, you're not supposed to look at a blemish on Yom Tov. So therefore, good morning. Therefore, we're not the lady or the person who has a neder. Good morning, he's confident. They're not so separated from this food because they know there's many options. There's the option I'll get the chacham to undo it. If I go find the chacham, even though it's dependent on others. I don't have the power to get this on my own. I'm beholden. I need others to get involved. But there's enough possibilities that they're confident they'll find the chacham. If they don't find the chacham, they'll find three people. Now, by the way, it's not always easy to find three people to come together to undo something. But we make efforts, we can do it. So the person is not so separated from the item when Shabbat comes. But when it comes to the firstborn, they're really separated from it because you can't. Who says the only one who could really do this? It's very limited. It's only this expert who could deal with this type of blemish, which is not clear a permanent blemish or not. And then he can't even do it on Yom Tov. So therefore, right. So therefore, they're really separated from it. Now, Romile Abai Rabbi Yosef. Abai asked Rabbi Yosef, "Mi Omer Rabbi Shimon." Now we're getting back to the laws of moving a candle. Rabbi Shimon holds that once the oil lamp is out, you could go in and move it, right? As long as the oil lamp is on, you can't move it. Muktzeh, right? But you're separated from it. Now we learned until now most probably because you might take it out, right? We learned that if you move it while it's on, there's a good chance that the fire will be extinguished. That seems how we're learning until now, and we'll see how the Gemara is going to question that. The Gemara says, "Me now." Rabbi Yosef, me or Rav Shimon? Rav Shimon, is it possible that Rav Shimon says if it goes out the lamp, I can't move it? However, kafta in, if it goes out, I can't move it. But lo kafta, if the fire is still burning, lo, I can't move it. My timer, why? Like we said until now, Dilma bahade denake la kafta. Maybe when you take it, if you take it while it's on, it will be extinguished, and you'll be violating one of the 39 malachot on Shabbat is extinguishing. So the Gemara says, but Hashamini le, we know Rav Shimon has a different law. What's Rav Shimon's different law? The Amad Dava she'em etchavein mutar. Something that's done without intent, right? If you go ahead, there's a possibility that you might make a groove in the ground by dragging the bed or the couch outside in the dirt floors. You might make a groove, and that groove will be softening the land, and it softens the land. It makes it easy for planting the seeds. Because that's called charisha. That's called plowing. So, can I move a bed that has these iron, stick legs on Shabbat? Can I do it? I want to move the table from point A to point B on Shabbat. Rav Shimon says you could do it. Why? Because it's not definite that I'm going to make, it's no intention, like Mark said, I'm not intending to make a groove. I want to move the table from point A to point B. I don't have no intention to make a groove, and it's not definite that I'm going to make a groove. I don't mind. I don't want to, Rabbi, I don't want to make a groove, but you're making a groove. Don't tell me you don't want to make it. You're doing it. No, it's not definite that you. That's called sikri shot. When you're definitely going to have. When it's not definite, you're making the groove. If Shimon says you're allowed to do it, you're allowed to do an act. You don't know that you're going to buy. So why can't I lit? Who says that when I move a lit candle, might not go out? Depends how good your hand is. Depends how strong the fire is. So why is there a problem? Rav Shimon, Hashemina Rav Shimon, Dov Shimon is chavim muta. The Tanya, Rav Shimon Omer, Rav Shimon says, Gora Adam kisei mita v'safsal. A person could drag a chair, a bed, a couch on the ground, on the earth, not on the carpeting. That's no question, no problem. As long as you don't have a mind to make a groove. So what's the problem with moving the nair? So the Gemara suggests, Rabbi Yosef suggests the following answer. If I do an act, if I would have intention to do this act, I would be violating the Torah. So then, even if I don't intend to do that act, a violation, Rabbi Shimon would say I can't do it. However, right, but so right. So Rashi says that this type, even if I intend to make the groove by moving the bed, that's called not the normal way of making a groove. You don't usually take a bed and use a bed to make a groove in the ground. You take a shovel, you take a plow, whatever it is. Therefore, even if I intend to make the groove, I will not be violated. I will not be in the Torah category of violation. I will not be able to violate the Torah with intending to make a groove by using a bed.
So if something and I use an unconventional way of doing it, it's not a violation.
No, it's not. It's not a Torah violation.
Yeah, it's not a Torah violation.
But so
you don't need plow. Torah violation.
Right. So
if I use a fork to plow instead of
that's a rabbinic violation. And now if you use the fork, which you're not intending to plow, right?
No, intending to plow.
The rabbinic violation.
Right.
If you go ahead and you do something with not the normal way, that's called kalachayad. That's called a shinui. That's not the normal way of making. That's not the normal way of plowing, and therefore that is not. Even though the result is the same, I got the groove in the ground, but that's not the way to do the malacha. That's not, if you go ahead and you do something like this, you made a fire. You picked up and by picking up your hand, your fire goes on. That's not a biblical violation, rabbinic violation. So here, right? So here, being that you go ahead and you had in mind not to make the groove, then you could go ahead and we allow you, rabbis let you do that. But when it comes to extinguishing, if you intend to extinguish this fire for the purpose of, let's say, making a better wick, to improve the wick, or to improve it, so therefore you'll be a biblical violation. So therefore the rabbis don't allow you rabbinically to do something that you might do the act of the malacha of extinguishing when there's a possibility that when you have the capability, if you would intend to do that, you would be violating the Torah law. That's why the rabbis are more strict. We'll see more tomorrow. More strict by extinguishing than by the grooving, because extinguishing has the capability of this actual act of being a violation of the Torah. If I intend to get it out the fire by moving the lamp, and I intend to get the fire out and to prove the wick.
But if I intend
to make a groove
to improve the floor,
but you tended to use, but you used the bed. That's not that. That would be klachayat. Maybe it sounds like moving a lamp, extinguishing it by moving it. It's not an unusual way. Maybe that's normal when you move something. If I want, that's normal. I want to get out the fire, I move it. Great day, everybody. By the way, there's someone that I know. I'm trying to collect a refrigerator for him. So I want to just say that we're trying to get it before Yom Tov. I wanted to get a refrigerator, and it's a big mitzvah to help a person for Yom Tov. Fiscal mitzvot.
But they have something other than sell.
I can give you a second.
They have Venmo, I can post it on it. A lot of people, don't have every single thing.
Okay, well, I'll get it, yeah.
Yeah, there's I can post it on the.
Very good. Fiscal mitzvot, everybody. Asaf, have a great day.